Hello guys, welcome to this new video lesson. Today we shall have a new lesson, The Diary of a Young Girl by Anne Frank. The story of Anne Frank has inspired generations of readers for its candid, truthful, frank, and sad, distressing, poignant description of her personal life, as well as the political climate of her times. Written in the backdrop of the Second World War, her diary entries are an incisive. They express her clear thinking, the analytical commentary. It's a document. The diary, written by Anne Frank, is in fact an analytic, explorative, detailing document about the shocking atrocities of the Second World War. Now, her diary entries, they are commentaries on the disastrous life, the poignant plight, and the heartbreaking situation of the common people, especially the Jewish, while they were living under the Hitler's regime. So, Anne Frank's diary, in fact, it portrays or reveals humanity, the atrocities and the cruelties suffered by humanity under Hitler's regime. The diary is in fact written in Dutch language and was translated into 70 languages with over 30 million copies sold. So the diary was in fact written in Dutch language and then it was translated into several other languages, almost 30 million copies sold. Anne Frank, she was a German born Jew. We need to focus on these three details. She was a Jew born in Germany, hailing from a liberal family of Jews. She was a very matured child from her early age itself, and she was endowed. She had lots of skills, capabilities, and faculties with perseverance, resilience, and courage. You can see a photograph of the family of Anne Frank. You can see her father, Otto Frank, and her mother, Edith Frank. Otto Frank, he was a German businessman, later a resident of Germany and Netherlands and Switzerland. And he was, in fact, the only survivor of this Second World War and the aftermaths and the consequences that the whole family, the plight of the whole family, and all the cruelties that they had to face and encounter during the Nazi German rule. Anne Frank, as said, she was a girl with strong urge to study, very determined, very much perseverant, and she had a lot of flexibility. She was ready to adapt herself to the situations and surroundings. That is what is meant by resilient, which we are see today. The world is resilient against the pandemic situation. We have become more challenging. We are ready to equip ourselves and adopt certain kind of strategies and lifestyle in order to adapt ourselves and survive to the current lockdown situation. Likewise, Anne Frank was also a very flexible, courageous, matured girl who was very studious. She had lots of ambitions and aspirations. Her ambition was to become a journalist. Anne and her sister, you can see the photograph of Margaret Frank. Both of them, they were smart and studious. And what was her philosophy of life? What was her aim? I need to have something besides a husband and children to devote myself to. I want to go on living after my death. It shows a maturity beyond her age because during the time when she was writing this diary, in fact, she was just a girl of 13 years, born into chaos, living in chaos, a country which was alien to in security, safety, and peace. That country has never experienced peace, safety, and security. So even then, she was very much confident and determined. She had clear, coherent ambitions and aspirations for her future, unlike normal women who just resorted to a family life. Even if they are educated, even if they are well brought, even if they have a lot of ambitions, later on they may fall or succumb to this kind of a family life. That doesn't mean family life is something unpleasant. But then Anne Frank, she had got coherent, clear-cut, and lucid kind of plans for her future. She wants to live on even after she dies, and that word was really, what do you say? It in fact really it became verity, because even now we are talking years and years after the whole world speaks, discusses, and remembers Anne Frank, the Jewish girl, the Jewish German girl. Now, her diaries are a testimony to the persecution and genocide of Jews during Hitler's regime. So, her diaries, in fact, they are evidence to reveal or unveil the persecution and the genocide. Genocide is a mass extermination and the massive killing of people, especially Jews. We know what the Holocaust is all about. And during Hitler's regime, the diary reveals her conflicting. She was suffering a lot of conflicts, internal conflicts, and emotional disturbances. Not only Anne Frank, anyone who is living and residing in such a country, such a situation, under the impact of a brutal dictator. Of course, it's quite natural to undergo such kind of conflicting experiences, and her feelings and her mental agony was swaying. They are moving to and fro between faith and optimism in the wake of adversity to despair and dejection. Sometimes they had hopes and a lot of aspirations. They think that things will turn out well and order will be established, the country or the place, and their society will regain peace and order. But then sometimes they relapse back to dejection and despair. Anne Frank's diaries, they shed light not only on her personal issues like the problems of growing up, but also on the political turbulence, the political unrest, the political conflicts, the riots, the disturbances, the confusion, the catastrophe, the situation of the world, the whole world under the impact of World War, and in fact the whole place where she is living under the impact and the control and the authority of a very severe, inhuman kind of a dictator. Of course, Hitler's Germany is in fact a place. It was a place where humanity, human beings, especially the Jews, cannot reside or inhabit. It's not that easy to live in the Nazi Germany. And she is candid, she's very frank and truthful and open in her discussion of her growth, puberty, and the crushes she had. She had lots of, a young girl, of teenage. She had lots of personal feelings and a lot of intense private emotions, which she gave vent or she expressed unabashedly in her diaries. And even she talks about her disillusionment with her mother, some sort of a love-hate relationship or some sort of an unpleasantness that she had with her mother. After her death, prior to the publication of the diary, her father actually attempted to delete the portions in which she frankly disclosed matters of her sexuality and the conflicts between her parents. So, a country, a family, a young girl living and residing in the Nazi Germany under the impact and the horrific, atrocious environment, atmosphere of the Second World War, and also Hitler's anti Semitic attitude and his strategies, which was prevalent and going on and on very vigorously during that time. So it is not easy for a young girl like Anne to have a peaceful, colorful, and passionate feelings, you know. Of course, they were disturbed, they were fragmented, scattered, hurt. She was really hurt and wounded at heart, even before she was physically abused. So she has poured out all her emotional and intense feelings that she suffered during her lifetime in this diary. And this is the main reason why, because her father, Otto Frank, later when he published this diary, or during the publication of this diary, he had missed, or he had doctored, or lots of manipulation had taken place. He had edited and omitted a lot of matters that she has discussed, frankly, because there was a lot of insecurity and safety issues, and a lot of policies they need to follow, especially Otto Frank. He had to oblige to so many other rules and regulations, and so many other transactions and dealings and formalities that he had to oblige to before the publication of his daughter's diary. There were lots of issues and matters that she discussed about with her parents, as well as the political issues, which might be harmful to Otto Frank, but personally, it may create a lot of issues in the society if revealed to the whole world. So all those things were monitored, doctored and manipulated and edited, you know. And the thing is, the thing we have to focus or keep in mind is that 2 years she and her family spent 2 years in a very dingy, very small, tiny, congested apartment. So that we know now, due to this pandemic situation, this lockdown, all of us are confined to indoors. We are curbed from going out. We are curbed or prevented from socializing and communicating and interacting with people. The only communication, the only networking we have is that on a virtual platform. So we know the mental struggle and the conflicts and the disturbances and the psychological conflicts that we are undergoing today to 2020. This year has pulled us, torn us apart in so many ways, beginning from the initial months of this year. So just imagine those days, how Anne and her family would have they would have met the struggle and the strain and the stress that the whole family might have undergone and experienced in those times. They had to spend 2 years in the same apartment. They cannot come out, they cannot see people, nobody enters, and they are just there, remaining there with meager food and meager facilities and provisions. So her diaries discuss the trauma we must think about, we must realize and acknowledge the traumatic situation, the psychological fragmentation, and all such kind of despairing and dejected disturbances and conflicts that might have gone through these people, the minds of these people, and the souls. What do you say? The dejection stricken souls that they had during these 2 years. And her craving, she was desperately wishing and craving for freedom, and her plans for life. Of course, she was hopeful, and she was optimistic, an optimistic girl. She was a lot of confidence and hopes and wishes she had about future. That is, after attaining freedom, her country and her family were free, and that they could have a native place, they could have a country, they would have a land to live and to love and feel secure and safe. And she had lots of plans for her future. But then she makes it clear that it is better to live such a vegetative kind of life than to get caught by the Nazi military or the Nazi force. Vegetative kind of life means simply existing. Living or spending 2 years in that dingy apartment, it was simply an existence or a survival for namesake. They are alive simply because they are breathing. It's you cannot call it alive at all. They are breathing, so they are alive. So it's they are alive for namesake. So that is it. The plight of Jews in Nazi Germany was miserable. You can see the photographs of the Holocaust, the after effects of the Holocaust, as a result of the Second World War and Hitler's regime. The Jews, they were really suppressed, oppressed, tortured, brutally murdered, killed, and treated. They were denied citizenship and they were subjected to ostracism and seclusion. What is ostracism? They were not considered as civilians, they were not considered as a part of the society, they were always secluded and kept away. They were shoved away from the society and social life. They were not considered as a part of the society. They were not considered even as human beings, you know. The Franks represent the millions of Jewish victims of the Holocaust who were persecuted and hounded. They were harassed and persecuted in by ways which is unbelievable. It was quite unbelievable that human beings could be so cruel and brutal to other human beings. So, inhumanity and atrocity at its peak. That's the definition of the Holocaust as history relates it. So Anne Frank and her family, they are a testimony, or they represent the whole Jewish victims of the Holocaust. The Frank family, they were a fortunate lot in that they were spared death because they could go into hiding. They could go into ambush. They were hiding for 2 years and they kept themselves safe in a very small room in their house upstairs. Okay, in where they kept themselves between some bookcases and bookshelf, and they actually placed a bookshelf and a bookcase so that nobody understand that there is a passage or an entry, that it is a room where you can enter into it. Nobody would realize or understand that it is a place where you could enter. They closed the entry into this secret room by a bookcase, by a bookshelf, and this place is often called secret annex. This is what Anne calls it, secret annex, or Acher Hugh in her diary. She talks about this place. They were hiding. When they realized that their lives were in danger, they fled into this hideout. The door was hidden by bookshelves. You can see the photograph of the dingy apartments. Yes, here it is. This is the secret annex, or Acher Hugh, that she mentions or refers to in her diary. Okay, so you may understand the difficulties and all the obstacles and the traumatic condition of the whole family, including Anne Frank, how they might have spent 2 years, if not 2 days or 2 weeks or 2 months. It is in fact 2 years that they spend in this kind of an enclosed room. During the German invasion of Netherlands in May 1940, please concentrate on the dates. Germany took hold of Netherlands in May 1940. Now, the family was held up in Amsterdam, that is the capital of the Netherlands, where they had moved to in 1933. So, in 1933, this was a new place that they moved into during 1933. But when Netherlands fell into the hands of Germany in 1940, the family, they were stuck in Amsterdam, that was the capital of Netherlands. They couldn't go out, they couldn't move about, and there was nothing that they could do but simply hide themselves. Anne's diary, it begins on 14th June 1942, and it charts the life of the family after moving into the secret hiding place and thereafter. So It was 1942, 14th June, the day which she started or began writing her diary. So it was in 1942, June 14th, that Anne started writing this world famous, popular diary, a testimony and embodiment of the Holocaust and the Jewish persecution and Hitler's Nazi regime. Yes, inhumanity at its peak. And you can see here the dingy apartment again, the congested room upstairs, her home in Amsterdam. There you can see a bookshelf which was kept in such a way that the passage, the entry into the room was closed and sealed. Somebody who looks at from the other side would never realize or identify that this is a place where we can enter, or there is a what do you say, a threshold. I mean, there is a doorway, or there is a passage, or there is an opening by which you can enter into this room. Spending 2 years in this apartment, in this congested, small, tiny room upstairs, her home, later on, the family was finally caught. Of course, they were hiding in ambush, they were hiding and keeping themselves safe for 2 years only. But then later on, somebody, a spy, in fact, an informer, give a piece of information, and they were, of course, caught. They fell into the hands of the Nazi army officers, and we don't know the history or the identity of this informer, the spy who deceived, who cheated this family and put them into danger. Nobody knows his identity, who he was. It was an informer. So he gave a tip off to the police, to the secret police force of Hitler, and it was done in a confidential way that his identity is not revealed even now. And Anne Frank and her family, they were arrested by the Gestapo. Gestapo is the secret German state's secret police. Hitler's secret police. That is what you call as Gestapo. It's a force. It's a force of policemen, army, and officers, and they were the confidential group of Hitler who did very much secretive and authentic work for Hitler, and they were arrested on 4th August 1944. Please check the dates. It was Anne started writing her diary on June 14th, 1940 and 42, and she and her family were arrested by the Gestapo, the secret German state police, on 4th August 1944. And where were they taken to? They were taken to another place called Auschwitz. Auschwitz is an industrial town in South Poland. It's the site of a Nazi concentration camp during the Second World War. Now, this is in fact the entrance of Auschwitz concentration camp. You can see, and there is a view or a sight from the concentration camp, how people were there, the condition of the people there. So there Anne actually witnessed the horrifying, gruesome, ghastly sight of her own people, her own family, her own relatives, kin, close ones, acquaintances. They were sent to gas chambers, of course. We all know what are gas chambers and what was the situation of the Jews, people who were sent into the gas chambers, and what was the purpose of this. Not delineating and explaining much about gas chambers, such as such a brutal act from the Nazis, Anne was spared. So most of her family members, friends, her own people, the Jews, they were taken to Auschwitz and they were sent to gas chambers. And it's better not to talk much about that because Anne was spared. She was escaped. She was saved from that because she was sent to another place called the Bergen-Belsen concentration camp. This was the place where she died. So this was concentration camp in northern Germany. Of course, you can see the visuals and the sights. Very distressing, despairing sights that we see. Now, this is the place called Bergen-Belsen. It is in northern Germany. It was another concentration camp where Anne Frank was taken to. Her family all were taken to Auschwitz. Now, here, Anne Frank, she died probably of infection called typhus. It was an infection disease caused by fever, headache, etc., etc. So another crucial, fatal thing that happens during a war of a global nature is, in fact, the outbreak of torrential diseases and infections. Because the world will become is the whole world is full of catastrophe and it's chaos everywhere. There are bombings, there is violence, there is murder, killing, and gunshots and destruction and utter obliteration is taking place. There is total, triggered, violence is triggered at its maximum. And infections and diseases and illnesses and sickness, all these are a part of an outbreak of a war, and that too of a global nature and status. So this is Bergen-Belsen, where she was inflicted with the typhus. We don't have much reports and authentic details about how she died and the reason or the cause for her death. But then at the age of 15, and was in fact, she perished. Unfortunately, the young girl died, and her father was the only survivor. And he was not aware of such a diary written by his daughter. You can see Otto Frank later in the 1960s. It's a photograph taken in the 1960s, I think precisely 1961. Okay, and he was only sole survivor of this Jewish Holocaust. But then he did not have much idea about, or he didn't have a knowledge about a diary which was written by his daughter. But then finally he had to fight so many legal battles, which I had told you the beginning of the lesson. I told you that he had to manipulate and edit and doctor a lot of matters in that she has written, which would create a lot of dangerous situations or a lot of issues and conflicts if revealed to the world. So he had to fight a lot legally to restore authenticity to the diary, which was accused of being forged and counterfeit. That is, so many allegations and so many accusations came up, emerged from different realms and from different grounds, that it was fake, it was not genuine, it was not authentic, it was not written. Such a book is a fake. It's a diary of which is forged and counterfeited. There was no thing called a diary, and there was nobody called Anne Frank, and such thing where a fake was a hoax. So he had to fight a lot in order to bring his daughter's diary, which was an embodiment or a testimony to the Jewish Holocaust and the persecution and suffering of the Jews during Hitler's Nazi regime. Okay. We shall have a look at the diary of Anne Frank, which was a red and white checkered book. You can see that. Red color and white color checks. There is a lock, there is a strap, and she could just close it, lock it, and keep it there. It was received as a gift on her 13th birthday. It was a birthday gift. So this diary is addressed to Kitty. And who is Kitty? Kitty is a fictional character in Sissy van Maxwell's Roep der Hel. Yes. Now this is a Dutch writer of children's literature. Sissy van Maxwell was a writer, a Dutch writer of children's literature, and Roep der Hel was a work authored, penned by Sissy, and the Kitty to whom Anne Frank's diary is addressed is a fictional character from this work called Roop Der Ho. So, Kitty, who was to whom Anne addressed her diary, that is, she writes, Dear Kitty, and Hello Kitty, my dear Kitty, etc., etc. That's how you write a diary, in fact. So that is a fictional character portrayed by this author of children's literature. She was a writer of the Dutch of Holland, and she used to write a series of children's books. So, Kitty was in fact a fictional character from her works, from her children's tales. She was a writer, she was an author who wrote a series of children's literature. So, this is Anne's handwriting. It's quite strange, and it's amazing to see that still fresh piece, a wonderful piece of history. And this diary, in fact, is a telling narrative on war, humanity, and identity. I repeat again. It's a telling narrative. It's a story about, it's a small story. A 13-year-old girl writing a diary to her dear fictional character that she, just like we all watch cartoons and animations, and we have a lot of series, isn't it? So we have all of us have our own favorite characters. Like this, Kitty was indeed a favorite of Anne Frank, and she that is it. It's quite natural. It's quite natural that she confided in this fictional character, and she was confident. She was pouring out all the intense emotions, private feelings, and all her personal thoughts and emotions, and her plans and aspirations, her hopes, fears, anxiety, everything. She's confiding with this character whom she loved a lot. So that is it. This is a story of a war. This diary is in fact a simple story, a tale written by a girl about the war, humanity, and identity. But later on, it has influenced great personages like John F. Kennedy, Nelson Mandela, Hillary Clinton, and John Bergman, of course. Now, there was even a movie in 1959. It was titled The Diary of Anne Frank. Here you can see the movie wallpaper. Yes, so here, even if it was a small storybook or a diary book which was written by a 13-year-old girl, one of the popular leaders of the world, Nelson Mandela, compared his own struggle against the apartheid to Anne's struggle against Nazism. So it was really wonderful and amazing. It's what do you say? It is an asset to Anne Frank and her family, especially the father, who was a sole survivor, because such a renowned, popular world leader like Nelson Mandela compares his own struggle, his own strategies, or his own war, his own rebellion and revolution against the apartheid. He compares it with Anne and Anne's diary, which is a testimony of her struggle against Nazism. We have we have a peculiar, similar kind of girl today, of course, Malala Yousafzai. Yes, she is also what do you say, a mouthpiece. She is also another embodiment of a young girl's innocence, a confident girl, a very determined one, very strong, who uses education and pen as a tool against the terrorism and such world fatal threats and forces, like just like that of Nazism. So there are many adaptations of this diary, and here you can see this movie, which was released in 1959. Of course, a secret annex today. So what has happened to the secret annex today? We shall see. In Nazi Germany, the anti-Jewish decrees ruled the day. So that was a condition of Germany under the Nazi regime and rule, totalitarian rule, and so much of so this is actually a revelation. Anne's diary reveals the conditions of Jews, the lifestyle and the life situations of the Jews actually during Hitler's regime. So many anti Semitic or anti Jewish decrees, laws, rules, and orders were proclaimed. There are so many things that the Jews were curbed from, or they are prohibited from. The Jews, they were supposed to wear a yellow star. They were banned from trams. Trams are vehicles. They couldn't enter vehicles. And they were forbidden to drive. They are not supposed to drive a vehicle. They are not supposed to drive a car. They had to be indoors by 8 o'clock. They were not supposed to go out. And they were barred. They were prohibited. They were prevented. They were curbed from theaters, cinemas, and other places of entertainment. This is how ostracism and seclusion has been decreed in Germany against Jews. They could shop only in Jewish shops and they could study only in Jewish schools. So, this passage, now we're going to learn two of the diary entries by Anne Frank. And these diary entries, they show the perils, the dangers that of being a Jew in Nazi Germany. How? How exactly did a Jew lived or resided in uh, how exactly a Jew lived in Germany under Nazi regime or Nazi totalitarian regime when Hitler was ruling and he was controlling the whole world and he was what do you say, inhumanly was the cause and reason for the Holocaust, where millions, almost 3 to 4 millions of Jews were killed brutally, mercilessly. So that is all about this introduction to Anne Frank and her diary of a young girl. Now we shall have a look at the secret annex. So this is the gravestone, grave of both Margaret Frank and Anne Frank, the two sisters, the two smart girls who were very ambitious, studious, and had very clear, hopeful, what do you say, pictures and plans for their future. Yes, here we have a beautiful quote by Anne Frank. Dead people receive more flowers than the living ones because regret is stronger than gratitude, in fact. So, Anne Frank's house, where she hid, and the secret annex today, is in fact a museum. It's a biographical museum dedicated to the Jewish wartime diarist Anne Frank. It is there in Amsterdam. The building is actually located on a canal called Prinsgracht, which is very close to the central Amsterdam in Netherlands. So this is one of the most populated or visited museums in Netherlands, and the museum was opened on 3rd May 1960, and it preserves the hiding place. Which is the hiding place? It's a secret annex. And it has a permanent exhibition on the life and times of Anne Frank, and it has an exhibition space about all forms of persecution and discrimination. So I think almost 1.2 million visitors had already visited in 2013 and 14. Almost 1.2 million visitors had visited the museum, and it is the third most visited museum in Netherlands. So that's all about Anne Frank, her diary, her life, the persecution and suffering of the Jews, the Holocaust, Hitler's Germany, Nazi regime, and what is the significance of Anne Frank's diary, which was a testimony and an embodiment of war, humanity, and identity. Thank you for watching. Thank you guys. See you in the next video lesson.